Okay, I want to start today by reminding you about the work that we did back at the beginning of the year when we were doing our nonfiction reading unit, and we were doing all of that research using the books from Epic, if you remember. When we were reading, we were working on the standard of trying to identify main ideas and the details that support them. And so remember when you were taking notes that you were reading, writing down the main idea, and then putting bullets underneath it, the details that the author used to support that. Now, if you did that work during the workshop, then trying to synthesize information over multiple texts on one topic should be pretty easy to you because you've already mastered that. But some of you, as we know from the post-test, did not do such a great job of making sure you were doing the work being asked of you. Okay? So now you're going to see where that was really important, because if you didn't do that important work at the beginning of the year, you can't do the work that's required of you when you're approaching a text set to write an essay. Okay? So as you can see, it's really important for you to always make sure that you're doing the work that's being asked of you during the workshop, because it is all important, and it's all going to come together with what you need to do. Okay, so what I noticed when I was looking through your plans is that a lot of you were having difficulty coming up with that third main idea, and some of you were even off topic from the thesis, or your main ideas were not parallel, okay? Meaning that you were not talking about the same thing in every main idea. Like, for example, one was a problem with birds, a problem with turtles, how to solve light pollution. Can you see how those are not parallel? Because you had problem, solution. All right, so today I'm hoping to walk you through this another time, reminding you what you're supposed to be doing when you're annotating, and then making sure that we use that to approach this text set properly, because we want to make sure our thesis is aligned, our main ideas are aligned, and then our support. Okay, so who can remind us what we were supposed to do with this text set? What was the task, Sebastian?
We were supposed to annotate.
Okay, we were supposed to annotate. Before we annotated, we looked at the prompt, right? And what did the prompt tell us that we needed to do, Isabel?
We needed to do an essay.
An informational essay. What does an informational essay do? What does an informational essay do, Matthew?
It helps the reader of the essay understand about light pollution.
Okay, well, it's not always going to be light pollution, right? The topic is going to be different. When you're asking to write an informational essay, what is your purpose?
You're providing somebody with facts about whatever the topic is.
Right, so you're basically teaching them, right? You're teaching them about this topic. Okay, so you have to have the right lens on in order to read the text and know what you should be paying attention to. Okay, so we know that the topic is light pollution, and we know that we're being asked to write an informational essay on light pollution. And so, Liz, would you get a book, please? Put it on top of your desk so I can see you reading it. Thank you. So we want to make sure that we're approaching this the right way with the right lens on it. Okay, so one of the things we learned was that we needed to annotate the text. Gabriel, remind us, what does it mean to annotate the text?
To write about the text.
To write or talk back, to jot notes in the white space, right? Okay, so let's start reading. If you can't see this from your seat, then you have your own text in front of you. It says, this is source one, a light pollution study near you, by Noreen Grease. Thousands of years ago, people looked at the starry night sky and saw thousands of twinkling stars. They imagined star patterns and star gods. The night sky was a major part of their lives. Ancient sky watchers timed the rising of certain stars or sky patterns and used them as a sky calendar to help decide when to plant and harvest certain crops. Today, the nighttime sky has changed, and for some people, it has almost disappeared. If you live in a big city, ask yourself, what looks brighter, The lights in the buildings or the lights in the sky? The answer most likely will be that the lights in the buildings are brighter than the stars. So what are we reading about here so far? Connor, what are we reading about here so far?
That some people are able to see the night sky like they were used to when like back in the day.
Okay, so what did you write in the white space for this section? What did you write?
I wrote that the stars in the night sky aren't visible to the big cities.
Okay, so you can put down night sky disappearing, right? Or something along those lines. And remember what we learned was we just want to put a few words because we don't really want to sit and write a whole sentence. We don't really want to spend too much time. We just want to leave ourselves a little breadcrumb so that we can go back and find it. Okay? All right, so then we move on. Businesses that operate at night must have lighting. That's obvious. But now let's add in light from street poles and highways, security lights, sports fields, and lit billboards. When you combine all these sources of light, you have so much that it actually illuminates the night sky and makes it hard to see the stars. A satellite photograph of North America shows that the most populated areas, particularly Boston, New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Los Angeles, and generally along the east and west coasts, have the most light output at night. Here it is almost impossible to do any sky watching at night. Has what they're talking about changed? Has the main idea changed at all, Matthew?
No, ma'am.
No, it hasn't. So we're still talking about the night sky disappearing, right? The night sky, we can't really see the stars if you live in a city that has light pollution, okay? All right. Light pollution is the term that describes the effect of artificial lights on the night sky. But there are concerns even greater than just the increased difficulty of seeing stars. Some studies of light pollution show environmental impacts with changes in animal behavior and plant growth. For example, birds blinded by lights glowing in high-rise office buildings have become disoriented and flown into buildings. Isabel, what are you thinking?
It harms living things,
Well, specifically, what does it harm?
animals and birds. And
It talks specifically about birds, right? Okay, so we can say that birds, right? And it said specifically that the birds were what? Disoriented, right? Okay, now this section, are we getting the idea of a new main idea? Are we getting the idea of a new main idea, Sarah? So what are they talking about now?
they're talking about how
All right, listen to this. Listen to this sentence. Light pollution is the term that describes the effect of artificial lights on the night sky. What do you think the main idea in this section is? Right. It's what is light pollution, right? Now, if you're approaching this text set as someone who is going to be teaching somebody about light pollution, do you think that's important that they know what it is? Okay, so this is where your lens comes in. This is where knowing what your purpose is going to help to guide you to know what's important. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and let's look at the second source. All right, so the second source is talking, whoops, let me close this off for a second, slide this down. Second source, Sources of Light Pollution by Renee Bauer. So another source, another article, different information about light pollution. Light pollution happens when artificial lights make it hard to see the night sky. Most light pollution is caused by outdoor lights such as street lamps. Many outdoor lights shine upward or sideways. This light escapes upward. It scatters and brightens the night sky. The brightness makes the sky harder to see. So what is this about? What is this source so far, reading that first paragraph? What do you think it's about? Sebastian?
It's saying like how the artificial light it's explaining how the artificial light is affecting the night sky.
Okay, so Is it still telling us what light pollution is?
No.
So how does it change? What would you put as an annotation? What do you think, Emily?
It tells us how light pollution is caused.
Okay, so causes of light pollution. All right, so air pollution can also cause light pollution. Air pollution happens when harmful particles are released in the air. These particles can harm people, plants, and animals. The particles also make light pollution even worse. They make more light scatter at night. Outdoor lights that send all light downward reduce light pollution. These lights are called full cutoff lights. They are called full cutoff lights because they give no direct up light. Are you noticing anything about the main idea, Matthew?
It's kind of like
Go ahead, Lewis.
in paragraph 10, it's saying like possible solutions.
Well, it doesn't say the solution, but what does it say? Can you read that first sentence?
Otherwise, that send all it down would reduce light pollution.
So what is it talking about? Preventing it or solving it? What is it talking about?
It's showing how you can reduce light pollution.
Okay, so if we put reduce light pollution over here. Okay. Another way to reduce light pollution is to use less powerful lamps or bulbs. Look at the diagram. The top shows an example of poor outdoor lighting. The light shines upward and sideways, which causes light pollution. The bottom shows an example of good outdoor lighting. The light shines downward. This minimizes light pollution. So are we still talking about how to reduce it?
Yes.
We are. We're still talking about how to reduce it. Okay, and we have pictures to show the differences between what causes light and what minimizes it or reduces it. Okay, let's look at source 3. Source 3, Light Pollution by Catherine Clark Fox. In most situations, light helps us see. But when it comes to looking at the night sky, light is actually a kind of pollution. It hampers our view of some of life's most spectacular sights, stars, planets, and even galaxies. When I was a little boy, I loved the night sky, recalls Robert Gent of the International Dark Sky Association, an organization working to reduce light pollution. Isabel?
It is talking about how light pollution finds you.
Are we going back to something we've already had?
Yes.
What did we have before?
It is. No, it is not.
Yeah? Does anybody else hear a main idea that we heard before? In another source, Connor?
You can't see the night sky.
Okay, so we're talking again about the effects of on the night sky. Okay, so the effects on the night sky when we're talking about this right here. I remember looking up at the sky, and the sky was filled with stars, and I asked, how many are there? How far away are there? Please go put your computers away. Your things have been brought next door. Can we visit them? I became an astronomer because I was amazed by their beauty, he says. Now in most big cities, kids can't see the stars like I did. Normally, about 2,500 individual stars are visible to the human eye without using any special equipment. But because of light pollution, you actually see just 200 to 300 from today's suburbs and fewer than a dozen from a typical city. Only 1 in 3 Americans can see our own galaxy, the dazzling Milky Way, with the naked eye. Those people live far away from the lights of big cities, office buildings, and shopping malls. So has our main idea changed at all, Matthew?
It hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed. We're still talking about the effects of light pollution on the night sky. Many cities and towns have passed laws limiting lights at night, making sure enough shine for safety without creating a lot of light pollution. Light pollution affects more than our view of the heavens. Research shows that lots of nighttime light can harm wildlife. Isabel, your hand is up.
When it said it limited past laws that limited nighttime light, isn't that with the reducing
Okay, so she heard, when I read that, she heard something that sounded a lot like what we had talked before, reducing the light pollution. Okay? Migrating birds sometimes fly over cities and become confused by the brightness, flying in circles until they drop from exhaustion. Sea turtles need dark beaches for nesting and won't approach night lights. Too much light at night may even affect human health. Scientists are still learning more. Anybody hear anything in that paragraph that reminds you of something? Gabriel?
It reminds us of how light pollution can affect life and how it affects.
Okay, so stop for a second. I don't think you heard my question. Okay? Is there something we have already read that connects to this?
Oh, it says in source one, it said that it impacts the changes of animal behavior and plant growth and birds blinded.
Okay, so it talked about the birds again. So we have birds again. That's the second time that the birds are mentioned. Okay, what else are they introducing now instead of just the birds? Rossi?
Sea turtles.
And the sea turtles. Okay, so can you see how as we're reading and we're identifying the main ideas, we're also making connections back to other sources in our text? Okay, that's the type of thinking that you need to be doing when you're approaching a text set. You have to not only read and understand this, but then you have to make connections between and across the texts. Okay? All right, let's move up here and see. For all these reasons, researchers are looking for ways to use lights only when and where they are truly needed. Everyone deserves to look up at the infinite night sky. Okay, so again, right here, we're talking about reducing light pollution. Okay, so we have information about reducing it. All right, we also have information about what light pollution is. Okay, and then we also have several pieces of information about the problems or the effects that light pollution has on life or plants and animals. Okay, all right. Let's move on to the last source, source 4. Okay, some of you actually came up to me and said, Mrs. Jason, this source doesn't have anything to do with light pollution. And I have to tell you, that concerned me a lot. Because if you read this source and you said that it had nothing to do with light pollution, and so I'm wondering if we have a comprehension problem. Okay? All right, so let's take a look. Whoops. Sorry about that. Still on the learning curve here. All right, so cops save sea turtles hatching at Florida resort. Sarasota officer Derek Connolly was on patrol at 1 a.m. Saturday when he saw sea turtles hatchlings crawling toward the front door of the Lido Beach Resort. A passerby also told Connolly that several dozen other baby turtles were crawling around the hotel's parking lot. Connolly, along with some resort guests, scooped up the hatchlings in a box and released them into the water. I began collecting hatchlings from the street and stopped traffic several times to do so, wrote Connolly in a report. Connolly also called 2 area marine rescue groups. Sea turtles nest from May 1st to October 31st in Florida. Sea turtles make anywhere from 40,000 to 84,000 nests in the state each year. Adult females nest every 2 or 3 years and lay several nests in one season. They emerge from the water to nest on the beach mostly at night. Nests average 100 eggs, which incubate in the sand for about 60 days, depending on the species. According to biologists, sea turtles' hatchlings are born with the instinct to move toward the brightest direction. On a natural beach, this direction is the light of the open horizon, which could be why the Sarasota turtles are headed toward the hotel's front door. Okay, so how does this source connect with our topic? How does it connect with our topic? John?
It shows the bright lights we have attracts the sea turtles' eyes.
Okay, and so would you call that light pollution?
Yes.
Okay, so it's talking about light pollution and the effects on sea turtles. All right, so now I want you to think for a second, because in a minute I'm going to have you turn and talk with your partner, but I want you to think for a second. You have been asked to write an informational essay about light pollution. You've read through the text, we've annotated the texts. We know that our purpose is to teach somebody about light pollution, and we know that it says the problems of light pollution, okay? When you're teaching somebody a topic, there are certain things that they need to know. All right, so really quickly, I want you to go ahead, turn and talk with a partner, and I want you to come up with one main idea that you could put in your essay. All right? If you finish before I call you back, then try to come up with two.
People can't see. Like sea turtles.
Light pollution affects
It's
like sea turtles. Light pollution affects so many things. Like birds,
Yeah, I have that.
so yeah, it affects like or we could switch it out. We could say light pollution affects sea turtles. Light pollution affects and light pollution affects
The sea turtles and the birds fall under one
or they all fall under one category. That's light pollution.
Okay, let's see if we can share. Isabel, could you give me a main idea that you might use in your essay?
Light pollution can be solved.
Okay, but was that the word that we wrote in the annotation, that we can solve it?
No. Light pollution can be reduced.
Okay. Whoops. Okay, somebody with a different one? John?
We could say light pollution can
Need more time to think about it? Okay. Matthew?
there's more than one source of light pollution.
Let's hold on to that for a second and hear some others. Connor?
Light pollution can harm birds.
Okay. Another one? Kelly?
It makes it hard to see light pollution makes it hard to see the night sky.
Okay. Malik?
Light pollution can affect any animals.
anything else? Anybody come up with something different? Okay. Think about what we talked about. You're teaching somebody about light pollution. What main ideas need to be included? Sebastian?
Light pollution affects animals.
Okay, we already have that. Affects the animals. Callie?
What is light pollution?
What is light pollution? You can't assume our reader is going to know what light pollution is, right? We need to explain it to them because that's what our purpose is to be informing our reader. Okay? Yes?
Is a main ideas allowed to be a question?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yes. Your main ideas could be a question. All three of your main ideas could be a question.
I wasn't sure
They could be. All right. So, anything else? Yes.
what problems does light pollution make?
Yeah. Okay, I think we have that with the night sky, don't we? Yeah, we have that with the night sky. All right. Anything else, Connor?
How does light pollution affect animals?
Okay, I think that would be covered with this one. We'd just be saying it in a different way. So, I mean, on your individual plan, you could use that if you wanted to, but it's just saying the same thing in a different way. Matthew?
Is there more than one source of light pollution?
I don't understand.
I think he means like more than one
But-
problem.
No, he's asking,
Is there more than
a
one
source is the cause of it. But if you say what is light pollution, aren't you gonna talk about what causes light pollution? You don't think so? Okay, all right. All right, so I want you to look up here for a second and notice something. I said earlier that we want to make sure that our main ideas are parallel. Okay? And I wrote these specifically in this way, okay, to kind of separate our sections here. Okay? And I want you to notice that if you're going to talk about the effects, okay, for example, if you're going to talk about the effects of light pollution on, you're going to talk about the problems, and you're just going to talk about the problems, all right? You want to make sure that each of your main ideas is about a problem. So light pollution can harm birds, light pollution makes it hard to see the night sky, light pollution can affect many animals. Can anybody see a problem with these three main ideas? What's the problem?
But light pollution can affect many animals goes with the problems, and then light pollution makes it hard to see the night sky also goes with problems, and then light pollution can harm birds also goes with problems.
Okay, they're all problems, but there's a problem with the problems.
Those are details.
No?
It says light pollution can affect many animals, and it says light pollution can harm birds. Birds are animals, so it's overlapping.
Absolutely. These two main ideas overlap. How could we revise this so they don't overlap? Matthew?
Light pollution can harm many birds because light pollution can affect many animals. It includes birds.
But then we only have two main ideas. So how can we revise, Connor?
Light pollution can affect. You can change it to sea turtles.
Absolutely. And now they no longer overlap. Okay? So now we're talking about We're talking about two different birds. If you go with Mrs. Lyons, please go ahead out. We're talking about two different types. Okay, we have hummingbirds affecting the night sky, and how they affect sea turtles. Are all of those problems? Are all of those problems? Yes, they are. Okay, so these are parallel main ideas. They're parallel. If I said, what is light pollution, and then I said light pollution can harm animals, are those parallel? No, they're not, because you're giving information on what something is, and then you're talking about a problem. If I talk about a problem and then I give a solution, can you see how those are not parallel either? Okay, so let's look at the ones that are above the line. All right, so we talked earlier about the fact that if we're teaching somebody about something, which is what our purpose is, we need to define it, right? We need to, what is it? And describe it. And use the evidence from the text to describe what it is, okay? And we also know that the text gives us ways that light pollution can be reduced and how that would help. And why do you want to know about why it should be reduced to help people? It's because it causes problems, okay? So you could also approach this text set and as a teaching tool. You'd have to go exactly in this order, though. You'd have to start by, what is light pollution? And you have to explain what problems are caused by the light pollution, because that would naturally flow into the fact that light pollution could be reduced. Does everybody see that? Okay, if you said, what is light pollution as your first main idea, and then you said light pollution makes it hard to see the night sky, and then light pollution can affect sea turtles, can you see how those are not parallel? Okay, everybody see that? All right, so during workshop today, what you're going to do is you're going to take the time to look at your plan, and I want you to revise your plan. Things to look for. Is your thesis statement aligned with the writing prompt? Are your main ideas parallel? Are you making sure that you're not jumping around from part to part? And then making sure that your evidence that you've chosen goes and is aligned with your main idea. Does anybody have any questions before I send you off? Okay, so go back to your seats and go ahead and revise